friends, welcome to another episode of Cosplay Vicar. Now this week I was doing a troop and my E11 blaster let me down. The handle essentially came off from the overall blaster, and all that had happened was the epoxy resin had somehow dried out and gave way. I've never had that before on a troop, so this was a little bit of a shock to me. Now this happened, which could turn out to be good news. Now a couple of things I could have done. I could have put some pins in here, of which that would have held on much better than being glued in, but this works to my advantage because when I made this 5 years ago, this is my trooping blaster. This is the one that essentially I take to troops with me. I have lots of different blasters that I've built that I'm pleased with, but I want something that's rough and ready that I could take to a troop and would do exactly what I want it to do. Hold together, look good. So I was thinking, off the back of this troop, rather than just gluing this back on and doing a repair, all my later blasters, so here's one that I've been working on with my son, and he's got a working trigger. My other E11 blasters that I've shown in other videos have working triggers that actually make the firing noise. I don't want to do that with this blaster. It's really nice just having a working blaster that if I drop it and damage it, I'm not going to be that bothered about. But I was thinking, do you know what? This is a great opportunity to put a working trigger in this blaster and show you how I do it. Because a number of people who watch the videos have said, yeah, but how have you done the trigger? I don't understand how you've done the trigger. And it's really easy. The trigger is essentially using an elastic band. There's far more clever ways of doing it than this, but this is the simplest way of just using an elastic band. So I'm going to use my Dremel on this. I'm going to try and clean this out. The trigger at the moment is glued in place. I'm really hoping that as I start to Dremel out in here, I might be able to free up that trigger. If I can't free up the trigger, it's going to be game over. So I'm going to have to be very careful because I want to reuse this trigger. But essentially, I'm going to let you kind of travel with me. So this is less of a how to do it, more of a what happened video. So here we go. I'm going to try and work on putting the trigger in. What I'm going to aim to do is Dremel out the inside of the handle, giving myself some room to put a pin in, and the elastic band around to what will be a little peg inside that the elastic band will go around. So I'm going to attempt to drill out this first, give myself a route in, work out quite where I want to be clearing out. I'm going to mark up where I don't want to go beyond, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go careful and steady. I don't want to go any further in. So all I've done is just mark out a rough area that I'm going to start at by drilling into. I'm going to drill out the corners. I'll start from there. One of the things here is you just don't want to go too aggressively. Essentially, I put my mask on, I can't see a thing. Essentially what, the resin is incredibly soft. And the last thing you want to do is go far too quick and lose all integrity. Yabba dabba do. Okay. Trigger's out. So that's what the trigger looks like. You can see this really, but it's a very simple design. So you can actually put a little pin through here. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to clean this up first so we end up with free movement. I'm actually going to use now a smaller Dremel piece. I want to go really careful. I don't want to take too much off. So I'm creating just a little bit more of a gap in here so when the trigger goes in, it's free to move backwards and forwards. But I don't want to create too much. You don't want the trigger moving left and right like that. You want it just to be able to move up and down. So you don't want to remove too much. I'm just going to put a hole in the top of the pin. So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to attach the elastic band around the trigger and up in the barrel, so the elastic band essentially it becomes the pulley backwards and forwards. So maybe a little bit too big, but it's all I've got. But it will be, I'm going to pop a bit of glue in there so it's glued in. But essentially what you're doing, you're extending the trigger with something that you can actually grip that elastic band around. You need something that's not going to come out and something that's substantially enough to make a good little lever and is not going to bend once it's inside and all glued together. So that's probably the best I've got. Like anybody else, I've got a tin full of bits and pieces that you collect. And eventually you find a use for your screws, don't you? Right. What I now do is I'm gonna put the hole through here for the pin to go through. I've got my pin, which is going to go through the gun and through the lever, but I put the hole through the lever once I've got the hole where I want it on the gun. So I'm just going to look at my other one. Where did I put it on here? Okay. Okay, so what I've done is I've not only checked it on there, but I'm also looking at where I want the lever to sit in the gun. And I'm just looking at I really want the lever to be right in the center of the resin pistol, just so you don't end up splitting you don't want to split your trigger because you put it too close to the edge of the resin. Obviously you want to be in the same place going through the other side. It's easier said than done with something that's not actually flat. You don't want a wonky trigger. What I've done is I went for a very small hole just to line it all up, make sure it was lined up, and then I'm working up on it to the point where I've got so what I'm doing is I'm just working up on the hole to make it a bit bigger to the point where it fits. I'm going to move the hole. I know I've just drilled the hole. I could fill it back in with epoxy resin. I'm just wondering if actually where I want it to go is a slightly different spot to where I've put it. I think I do. I'm just going to move it. Annoying. Okay. So I've now made 2 holes, which is a bit of a regrettable thing, but I think where I've now put it would actually be better. So I'll explain maybe why I've done that in a second. I felt like the trigger was going to end up being too high. So really the trigger needs to sit sensible in the gun, like kind of needs to sit in the gun so it looks like it's genuine, whereas I was actually taking it a bit too high. Okay, test fit. There we go. Much better than my first round. So, my next challenge is going to be to just take the ends off the screw, off the nail, sorry. I don't want this big bulky end, and I don't want the spike on the other end. You're probably going to tell me a better way of doing this, and I would welcome your opinion. There we go. Oh, it's going to be very hot. Excellent. So that's how my pin fits in. The next job is going to be much easier, I hope. Now I've got my pin, I don't want to lose that, and I have my trigger. So I'll put that in there for a while. And the next job is much easier. So what I'm essentially going to be doing is we put the screw back into the top of the trigger here. I'm going to take a little bit of that off just to make it a little shorter, and we also want to put another screw up at the top. So what you're essentially going to have is a screw down by the trigger, a screw up at the top of the pistol, so this elastic band will kind of connect between the two, causing it to pivot. So all I've done is then glued that in as well there, and that's what the elastic band will eventually pivot off inside of the gun. You could take it a little bit lower if you wanted to use it small, but what I like about is having these larger ridges, it's less likely to kind of come off at the top. Great, that looks like that's done. So we've got the trigger, we've got the pin in there. What we then have the elastic band kind of coming up from here up to about here inside. And you can see that so the elastic band will sit like there. So we're going to want to take some of the inside out. So we've actually got a place for the screw to sit, because the screw has to sit lower. Because this is going to obviously sit on top of the barrel, so the screw's going to be low enough, so this will go back on the barrel. I hope my descriptions make sense, because I feel like sometimes they really don't. So, can I come round and try and show you on here so you can see it a bit closer up? Here we go. Let me focus, there we go. So what I've done is I've taken the inside out, but left this space here for a screw to sit in for the elastic band. You see go. So screw sits inside. Let's give this a little test run. If you've done this to your blaster, I would love to see how you've done it. What ingenious ways you came up with. This is just the way that I came up with. I'm going to fetch another elastic band. Okay, so sometime later got myself a short elastic band, so hoping that this may work better. It's just a regular elastic band the postman brings every day of the week. Go. You can see that. There you go. I think that's working. It is. That looks quite scruffy right now. I'm going to tidy it all up, but that's just a test. There you go. Playing with it, but what the screw I was using wasn't going to work, so I've changed the screw. I'm now using a bit of a nail. I think it's a plasterboard nail. I think that's what you call it. I'm sure in the comments will tell me. There you go. I got a plasterboard nail in there instead. Just stops the elastic band coming off. There you go. So what I'm doing is, imagine the end of the pin. I'm trying to just use my Dremel to kind of almost create a cap so that it holds it in place naturally. And I want to try and do that as much as I can, so it'll be a bit of trial and error going backwards and forwards. So what you do, you Dremel, you're heating the metal up and then just pushing in, and the metal will start to splace out. Splace out, and all the other. There we go. Actually, what I've been able to do there is fill the hole in with fill the hole with the resin that I've drilled out, and then put some super glue on it, and actually it's filled it in quite nicely, so I think you can't see now. Wonderful. So that's looking good. Right, what I now want to do is create two little pins that go into the, there we go. There we go. What I'm thinking about is creating two little pins out of dowel. One that goes either end of the trigger, with matching holes in here, so when I glue it all in, it's just got a little bit of extra stability in there. I'm sure that's what others have done in the past, rather than just gluing it straight on. So it was foolish of me to think it would last, but actually it's to my benefit because I now get to update. Haha! Don't know if you haven't seen this. Here you go. Looking a bit scruffy. So I've cut three, but essentially I'm going to use some of these pins just to make sure that it stays in place. template for the second hole. That's great. That's great. Okay, I'm going to leave that to dry for a little while. I'm going to do some tidying up, and then we'll come back and have a second look at it. There we go. So, tidied up. Glue's all set, which is fab, holding really well. I've given it a bit of a spritz of just black matte paint that I've got for all my blasters like this. Didn't need much because it was just the area that needed repainting. I didn't want to repaint the whole thing. So giving it a little bit of an updated spray there. And I am super pleased with my moving trigger. Go. Looks just how I wanted it to be. There we go. Updated E11 blaster. Moving trigger. So it's relatively straightforward. I'm saying straightforward. There was lots of fiddling to make it work. I'm sure you guys have come up with better options of doing it, but that's just my way of doing it, and it's worked well with all my blasters. Death Trooper blaster is at least 4 years old. My other E11 is probably about 4.5 years old, and all I've been using a laggy band and a couple of nails and bits and pieces like that to make it work. So I'm really pleased with that. I'd love to see what you come up with, if you've got an alternative way of doing it. But it's just a nice little touch to rest your finger on a moving trigger. Not that you're going to pull it, friends, but it just kind of adds an extra level of engagement with it. I do love the E11. It's probably my favourite of all of the blasters that I own, even above the Death Troopers E11D. There's something about the nostalgia of it. So there you go. There's my update. I'd love to see what you come up with, your way of coming up with a moving trigger. Share, do like the video, do subscribe, and I'd love to see what you come up with. So yeah, I'll say it again. Please subscribe. If you're watching this, if you're still here, please subscribe. It makes a big difference to the channel. Do like the video as well. That just helps it get onto the other algorithms. It'd be really helpful. So there you go, my updated E11. Thank you for watching. My name is Cosplay Vicar, and have a great new year as we get out there trooping again.